Welcome again, parents and students, to our evening webinar this night. We'll be talking on finding the right fit, making the right high school choice for your child. This webinar is dedicated to those families that have received offers from the boarding school's application, and now they are in the stage of thinking through their offers, weighing the pros and cons. Is that what we call happy problem? And now thinking through how to make that strategic choice of which school to enroll their child in. Now, before we go deep, this session will be recorded. Just part of the administrative areas to point out. We'll be recording the session so that parents, you don't have to feel free. You don't have to get worried in taking notes and all that. You'll get a video link afterwards, and those parents who might not be able to join today can also watch it afterwards. Next slide, please. Some families know me, and for those who don't, I'll just give a very quick background about myself. I am Daniel Sito. I am the founder and head of Sesameed Education. I have been working in the boarding school field for more than 20 years. I'm a Hong Konger, although I'm now residing in Singapore and call Southeast Asia my home. But I'm a Hong Konger. I spent the majority of my past career life in Hong Kong. I headed up my former practice also in boarding school consultancy in Greater China. And I sold it a few years back, and planning on to a less busy, less hectic kind of semi-retirement life out here in Southeast Asia. And so out here, I love education, and I love talking about boarding education. And gradually, parents come to look for me for advice, and so I also started Sesameed Education to continue that piece of work out here in this region. Next slide, please. Now, today we have a number of topics, so I'll be speaking a little bit fast. And again, don't worry about taking notes. There will be a video link, and on top of the video link, we will also be sending a complimentary checklist of what the parents should be doing in thinking through this process. And also for those who will be visiting the boarding schools on revisit days, there will also be a checklist for that as well. So there will be a little bit of a goodie bags that will be coming after the session today. Next slide, please. Now, first start off with understanding the landscape. For our tiny practice, out here, just based out here on our little anecdotal experience, we had processed 350 applications and received 120 plus offers, around 35%. We had reached out to, in that process, 150 applications. We had applied to more than 90 schools, with more than 60 schools giving our students offers. So a success rate of about 70%. So some families ask me, hey, Daniel, what are that one or two schools that you are really close with, that you have a very good connection with? Well, I don't really have good connections with particularly one or two. You can tell over my last 20 plus years, every year I'll be processing applications to over 100 schools. And so we have good relationship with many schools. We're not confined with only a few schools. Before we move to the next slide, just want to bring one point. This seminar is especially geared for families from Southeast Asia. So I just do want to mention that, from these data, we can interpret that the American boarding schools are still giving preferential treatment, quote, quote, preferential treatment to the families applying out from Southeast Asia is a developing market in the minds of the American boarding schools. Developing in the sense that they want to develop this market. So they want to attract more families to go to the campuses from Southeast Asia. And so therefore they would tend to be a little bit easier, a little bit more lenient in terms of their requirement. I used to come from Greater China, and is the success be much less. Right here, as I shared, our success rate is about 1 out of 3. One success out of 3 applications. If you are purely operating in Greater China, that number is going to be much lower. It's more like 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 6. All right. Back to our main topic of this evening, which is the big decision that we parents will need to help our child make over the coming 2 weeks. We received the offer back on March 10. Today is March 21st, so it's almost like a midpoint mark. And April 10 is the big day. We have to decide and pay the. So really, this is the big decision of which school to enroll our child in. And this is the focus of tonight's conversation. Next slide, please. Now, in the counseling world, especially under my counseling, I frequently would use the phrase "begin with the end in mind." Begin with the end in mind, and families that follow me would hear me saying using this phrase over and over again. This really encapsulates the spirit of counseling. In selecting the right boarding school for our child, the first thing is about big fish. We want our child to become a big fish, regardless of whether it's a big fish from a big pond or big fish from a small pond. All right, we all hear that, right? Big fish in a small pond or small fish in a big pond. No small fish. All right, it has to be big fish. You can choose whether it's a big pond or small pond, but big fish. All right. Because this is, if we just purely pragmatically, if not looking, too far ahead into life success, we're just looking at university success or college success. Nowadays, they focus on, especially the more selective ones, like the Ivy League. They would focus on those students who are competitive in the immediate environment, who have demonstrated excellence and competitiveness in their immediate environment. So that means they are looking for big fish, whether or not big pond or small pond. In order to do that, what does that mean, big fish? It means a student needs to stand out among the peers. All right. So whatever school that we are sending our child into, right, be it big schools such as Andover, Exeter, well, they are very big, right? They are among the biggest in terms of school population size. Or some of the smaller ones, like Groton or Thatcher, right? These are among the smaller ones, right? Equally prestigious, but among the smaller ones. Whether it's big pond or small pond, our child needs to be able to adapt to the environment and stand out. And how does our child stand out, right? It's easy to say, stand out, right? No, it's not like that, all right? Our child needs to be able to grow in the coming few years in such a way that they naturally, organically, they stand out. So it is our job as parents to pick the right type of environment for our child to naturally, organically grow the best, grow the most, so that they naturally, on a local relative basis, they would stand out vis-a-vis their peers, and they would become a big fish in the eyes of the colleges during the application phase a few years down the road. Next slide, please. Now, the first thing that we do in selecting a school, we have to understand the landscape. So understanding your environment is key. The first thing that we help our child to stand out, to grow, is to look at the fit. If it's not fit, then there's no basis to talk further. Okay, so in terms of fit, there are 3 types of fit: academic fit, extracurricular fit, social fit. So let's start off with academics. Now, every child has their own academic and has their academic strengths. Some are better in writing, some in humanities, some are more of a STEM focus. Different students are gifted in different ways. So we should, as parents, we should guide our child. And this is part of my homework for our Sesame families, that I would ask them to take the time to go to the few schools that they are seriously exploring and go into their academic catalog, course catalog, and go through the graduation requirement and then plot it out. Eventually, you have to do that anyway if you were to select that school, right? Plot out the entire course plan over the next 4 years from grade 9 to grade 12, or 3 years from grade 10 to grade 12, depending on which year will be entering. Therefore, then on an academic level what type of courses our child will be taking at any given year over 4 years. And just purely on the academic front, we will be able to deduce how competitive our child's academic profile would be, assuming that he or she will be getting all A's, right? It's not about A's or not. We already assume you'll be getting all A's, but about the academic rigor, how many APs or how many senior level electives, what is the type of orientation? Are you more engineering focused, or are you more history, international relations focused? What is it? So we will be able to see the academic fit. And here we'll also be able to see the type of electives and offerings that the school will have. Of course, the bigger the school, the more the electives. We are not going to worry too much about not having enough interesting courses to take or electives to choose from at big schools, because big schools like Andover, Exeter, hosting 1,000 student strong body, they will have lots and lots of courses to choose from. It's like a big buffet. All right. But for smaller schools, they still try their best to offer a rich variety of courses. But then we have to, because naturally, the number of courses will be fewer. We just have to be aware of that potential limitation and make sure that even the reduced number of selection is still good enough to fulfill the academic appetite of our child. So that's the academic fit. Next, the extracurricular fit. Some students are very much into a particular talent area. Let's say basketball, swimming, golf, right? So you want naturally to make sure that the school will have at least one season that will support your child's favorite sport. Now, there are other schools that have evolved to offer these special talents to be able to be developed more than one season. So there are some schools which will allow you to develop your golf in 2 seasons. And there are some schools which allow you to develop your swimming in 3 seasons, etc., etc. And therefore, depending on your child's extracurricular passion and strengths, then you might want to weigh the pros and cons of the extracurricular offering of that particular school. If your child is very strong in soccer, then you naturally will want to gravitate to choose, among schools that offer pretty strong soccer, program. But also, you might also get enticed into schools that offer year-long soccer program. So you're playing soccer not just 1 season, but all 3 seasons, right? So these are things that we need to be mindful of when choosing. Sports is only one factor. There are musics. There are performing arts like dance, like theater production. Now, there are some schools which, because of the way their schedules, the academic schedules are being designed, you have to choose either sport or dancing or drama. You cannot do both at the same time. You pick and choose, all right? Whereas there are some schools which they would just juggle the extracurricular activity schedule maybe to the evening, so that you can still play your American football in the afternoon and still do your drama, singing and dancing in early part of your evening before your study hall. There are schools like that. Now, every school operates slightly differently. That's the beauty of American education, American schooling. So every school, they are free to innovate and come up with a structure that is best for them. And so therefore, we as consumers, right? We as parents, we consumers, right? We should be aware of what there is available from the school side and see which one would fit our child's needs the most. Not every child would want to do sport and drama singing at the same time. So even with that type of configuration, it doesn't mean that it will bring value to every family, only to those where the child wants to do sports and drama at the same time, in my example just now. But you guys get the idea. So we need to make sure that there is enough of a fit between what the school offers, what our child wants. Next, social fit. Um, we want our child to be happy. We'll later on we'll have a slide which talk about why, but we intrinsic in a gut feel, we know we want our child to be happy. And therefore, it is important to analyze the culture of the student body. Some schools are a little bit more intense than others. Some are a little more chilled, right? So for some parents, they know that, wow, this school is way too intense, man. It's like the students here are not teenagers. They're like adults, right? It's too intense, right? Whereas some families, well, that is exactly what I need, what my child wants, right? Some others are just too chill, right? It's just not challenging enough or not intense enough. So therefore, look at the culture of the school, of the student body, to make sure there's a cultural fit, a social fit, a fit on the social dimension. At the end of all this, it's about fit. We're going back to last slide. We are trying to help our child to become a big fish, right? Again, using that, figurative type of an analogy, right? Really, we want our child to grow, all right? Only through the way, the amount, the degree that they have grown, that they will be growing, that they will have the chance to stand out. And it is through standing out that our child will have the chance to be a big fish in whatever pond that we will be choosing for our child. Next slide, please. Now, what are the factors affecting school experience and therefore growth? Because otherwise, what is the point of school experience, right? In the context of choosing a school for our child, these factors that affect school experiences, therefore experience also affect the environment that our child will be growing in. So therefore affects our child's ultimate growth. So what are these factors? The very first factor is the school population. All right. Many families discard that as irrelevant or unimportant, but actually this is not. For seasoned counselors, we all know that this is the very first thing that we look for the right match when we form the school list for our family. This is the very first factor that we consider for our child is the school population. Schools that are big, of course, as I said, it's using like a buffet restaurant as an analogy. They offer lots of choices, all right? And the mission of the school is really to offer lots of choices. That's why they are big. That's why they choose to be big, all right? In being big, in terms of size, population, what are they trading off? There's no perfect school in this world. There's no perfect environment. So it's all compromises. It's all trade-offs. So what are we trading off? We will be trading off the type of individual attention and the type of support or the nurturing environment, the spirit that comes from being a small, cozy family environment. So the bigger schools would tend to be more about you have all the choices in front of you. We expect you to have the independence and the judgment to pick whatever you want. All right. Our job is to give you the choice. Your job is to be able to be independent enough for you to utilize those choices and to benefit from those choices. Whereas a much smaller school would be more about mental well-being, about you being happy, about being supported, and they might not have as many choices. It's okay, but good enough for your immediate consumption anyway, right? So therefore, you will see the bigger school and the smaller school, um, the type of nurturing atmosphere is actually very different. Next is academic rigor. Um, Academic rigor can be high at either big or small school. It is not directly correlated. You can be very big school and be very academically rigorous, just as you can be a small school and you still maintain your academic rigor. We want our child to hang out with smart peers, right? That is, of course. However, we also don't want to put our child to be in an environment that is too challenging, that he or she would always be kind of in the bottom half of the class academically in all the classes, right? It's okay. Like, maybe 1 out of 5, 1 out of 6 classes. They may have some challenge. It's okay. We can handle that. But if we are talking about half of the subject matters, we are in the bottom half of the class, then that is not going to be very helpful in becoming a big fish in gaining attention from the top universities a few years down the road. So in terms of rigor, it's not always the more rigorous, the better. We are looking for just enough challenge for our child to still get a straight A. At the end of the day, we want to be a big fish. We want straight A's, all right? Not straight B's. Next, boarding ratio. Schools that are low on boarding ratio tend to be more academically inclined only, whereas schools that are high in boarding ratio tend to be more holistically driven. So let's take it to the extreme. Schools that are low on boarding ratio, like 0%, that becomes day school. It's like international school, like many of our students are coming from, right? That is a lot about academic preparation, your intellectual development. But then for schools that are high in boarding ratio, there's a lot more to it than just academic development. It's also about character development, leadership development, social development. So that would also affect what type of growth our child will be experiencing, what type of environment our child will be living in over the next 4 years. Now, on boarding ratio, I just want to add one more point. Some schools might be okay on the boarding ratio, but if you take a deeper look, many of the weekends, students are actually even boarding students. They go back home. Then they may not be as helpful as what the official boarding ratio might suggest. So what we really need is to understand realistically on an average weekend how students actually stay on campus, right? Now, if for those boarding schools who are in the middle of nowhere, in the boondocks, that is not a problem because no one is going to go home because the home is not anywhere nearby. But then for some schools that are relatively closer to the metropolis, to the city area, then it is possible that there will be more students who will choose to go home over the weekend. So therefore, we need to be aware. We need to make sure that the school that for our child would not be empty, right, to get to the extreme over the weekends. Co-ed versus single gender. Now here we're talking about especially students that are not as strong self-advocate. They may be a little shy. They may need a little bit of encouragement, right? Then they might benefit more from gender environment. All right. Not everybody needs a single gender environment. The single gender environment are very helpful in bolstering the support structure, the atmosphere, for the boy or the girl to develop his confidence, his courage or her courage and confidence to take on leadership role, to speak up in class, that sort of an outcome. Um, Co-ed obviously has its own merits because our world is co-ed, right? So therefore, many students naturally prefer a co-educational environment, right? So, but then there are still times, lots of times, when there is single gender environment, like a boys' school or girls' school. Next, student diversity. Here, we're talking about a couple of diversity. One is international student diversity, like from how many countries do our students come from. Now, here, please do not get mistaken about international student ratio, because a school can have a high international student ratio, but doesn't mean that the international student body are very diverse. When could that happen? Say half of the international student body come from one country, most notably China, right? China is a big um, market for boarding education, and there's a great demand among the mainland Chinese to send their children to study abroad. So there could be possibility that some schools, the same school or both have 20% international student ratio, but one of those schools, half of that international student body might be coming from just one country. So therefore, what we want is to go deeper beyond the sheer number to understand what is really going on, how diverse really is the student body. Now, besides international student body, there is the domestic student diversity. So domestic students coming from the immediate, the few states that are surrounding the school, which is 4 or 5, or are they coming from all 50 states? All right. And the answer most likely would be somewhere in between. And so we would need to figure out kind of also the domestic student diversity. Why does diversity matter? We want to send our child to a school that would help our child be more ready for life, to broaden the horizon, to broaden the perspective. It is also through such broadening of the horizon and perspectives that our child gains reference point. And the more reference points that he gains, the more confident they become. And the more confident they become, the more that they are willing to do new things, to push the envelope further, to keep trying new things. And the more they learn, it's a virtuous cycle. So diversity is a good thing. Right? And many schools, brag about their diversity. We just need to make sure that their diversity truly is in line with their numbers. That's all. Urban access. Some students might benefit from having access to professional trainers or coaches in special talents like singing, or maybe visual arts, drawing and painting, or whatever coach, right? Let's say ice skating coach, right? So there are different specialties where you might not be able to find like really experienced, very seasoned coaches in the vicinity of that boarding school because it is out there in the middle of nowhere, right? But you might be able to find you might have a higher likelihood of finding such teaching professionals or coaching professionals when you have access to bigger cities like Boston or New York. So therefore, how close is the school to the big city? Urban access. Next, culture. As I briefly mentioned before, there are schools that are more intense. There are schools that are more chilled. This is also tied to the school population as well. Schools tend to be smaller in populations. They tend to be more family-like. Family-like doesn't mean that they cannot be intense. You can be family-like and be quite rigorous and intense as well. So this culture thing is more of a kind of a 360-degree type of a spectrum. Okay. Alumni network. Again, it can be helpful down the road when our child comes to the working world to be able to have connections, right? I come from from California, and I especially would feel very attached to anyone who come to say that he or she had also attended web schools, and that becomes we're alumni, we're fellow alum, even though we don't know each other. But all of a sudden, there's this strong school spirit, like school bonding, that would bring all of us together. So the alumni network also makes a difference. Bigger schools, of course, they will have a bigger alumni network. International brand, um, you know, schools have a different degree of exposure of having marketed themselves in different parts of the world. And especially I'm now in Southeast Asia, so I'll be speaking from Southeast Asia's point of view, that some schools are just barely trying to get into the region, whereas some schools that have been here many years. So most notably, some of the most widely recognized, top boarding school in Southeast Asia is Choate, and also, Singapore's, right? These are like big names that have been in this operating and marketing in this region for many, many years. But that doesn't mean that they are the only two good boarding schools, right? There are many, many good boarding schools, just that they haven't established as entrenched a brand recognition out here yet. But for some families, brand recognition is important, and it's part of their consideration. So therefore, this is also some of the factors that the parents might wish to consider. Next slide, please. Now, revisit days. I strongly encourage all of our families who receive offers, you attend the revisit day. If your time allows and if cost is not a concern, go to revisit. It's seeing is believing. It's really important. Just looking at the website tells you only at most half the story, only at most. All right, at best. And certainly don't trust ranking, because they are deceiving. And so I can offer another whole lecture on why rankings are not trustworthy. But try our best to go to revisit days, and even if not, do as much research and homework as we can before we pick the school for our child. This is a very strategic choice, and please do not pick it lightly, just from a number from the ranking table, or just from hearsay, what people say or what the website says. Now, revisit day, what do we look at? For those families who will be attending revisit day, remember, it's not how green the grass or how well paved it is, or how tasty the food is, or how beautiful or new the buildings are. It's always about the people. People, people, people. Between faculty and student, look at the interaction. And more importantly, between student and student, look at how students themselves talk and behave among one another. How do we observe them? There are many different settings. First is the classroom, right? We will be during the revisit day, we will be shadowing in some of the classroom. Observe the interaction between the teacher and the student. Observe how passionate the teacher is in the subject matter. Observe how passionate the teacher is in teaching, right? A person can be very good in the subject matter, doesn't mean he or she is as invested in teaching. Those are two different things, all right? And also observe how the students sit. Do they sit in different clusters? In some schools, I have heard that maybe the Asians sit in one cluster of one corner of the classroom. The Americans sit another, the Hispanics sit another corner. It's like clusters, right? Or do they fully independent? When they discuss, do they talk, among the whole group as a whole, or just among themselves in each of the little clusters? These are things that we need to observe. This classroom, same thing at the dining halls. There's so much to tell from a dining hall. I would arguably dining hall is the best place to tell about a school culture. Not from the food, all right? I don't care how tasty the food is. And by the way, however tasty the food is, on that day, receiving because schools always put the best foot on the revisit days. It's really about where the students sit. What type of tables do they sit in? Do the Chinese sit in one table and sit another table, and yet the Japanese sit yet in another table? I mean, how integrated are they? What type of conversation topic are they engaged in? Do they talk a lot? Do they smile a lot? Do they giggle and or do they catch up on their iPhones and on text messaging? Right, right. So these are things that we need to watch out because this will be the environment that our child will be spending her next 4 years. Other areas, we walk across, student centers, observe again. Are students, actively engaging to each other, or are they indulge in their own phones? What are they doing? All right. At the corridors, do they talk? Is it absolutely silent, like very serious type of silence, solemn, or is it very happy, lively chatting? On the lawns, do they greet each other? Do they greet visitors like ourselves? Or do they all staring at their own phone, right? While from one classroom to another. Again, these are factors that we need to pay attention to. Happiness is one big factor. Happiness is the oxygen upon which our child can flourish and grow. All right. You being happy doesn't mean that you'll grow. But if you're not happy, you're certainly not growing. So next slide, please. Why happy? Now, there's some science to it, although I'm not a clinical psychologist, right? But there's some science to it. And a child is accepted, then they feel secure. When they feel secure, they will start developing that sense of courage. All right. That, oh, okay. If I mess it up, people are not going to laugh at me. All right. I'm not embarrassing myself if I fail, right? So therefore, they are more willing to try new things, to try something that they have not tried before. If we try something that we've always been trying, we're not going to embarrass ourselves because we practice it so much already, right? It is usually it's through getting ourselves into some new territory. I've never danced before. I'm going to dancing. I've never sing before. I'm trying out the choir. This is where it can be embarrassing because not every attempt would result in success. We might end up in not doing that great in that new activity. It is when we not do well in that activity, what is happening is that in enough of a support network, a support infrastructure to bring us back up again. So therefore, when we try new things, we'll get to learn, and we get to learn more. Hopefully, with a firm support structure, we will gain enough courage to try yet new things, be it whether we have succeeded or not. If we keep trying new things over and over again, we're not dumb. All right. Our children are smart. All right. They will be learning. They will be learning gradually. And with the learning, they will keep on gaining new confidence, new courage to try new things. And eventually, that's how confidence is being developed, is being built. We want our child to be confident. We want them to be assured that when they graduate from their high school, whichever school we pick for them, they can conquer the world. That's what we want our teenagers to believe in. Although that's still a little bit too naive for them, but that's what we want them to be. It is a good starting point for them to believe in themselves that they can learn anything in the world. No problem. I can learn anything, Papa, Mama. Right? Instead of saying, oh boy, I don't know if I can do this, man. Right? If they start doubting themselves whether or not they can do it, chances are they will not be able to do it. All right. So again, confidence, like happiness, is the minimum requirement, is the oxygen that would allow our child to succeed in life. So at this point, I would like to pass the microphone to Mr. Dexter, our head of university guidance, to talk a little bit more about success in high school and how that is related to college application.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Daniel, and thank you to all the families who've joined today. So, just springboarding from where Daniel left off, I think that it is so important for us to think intentionally about this idea of happiness and confidence. And so, from a college counseling and specifically thinking about what happens after 4 years of high school, how can we really leverage the space that your child will be occupying through the academic program that they're going through, as well as the extracurricular activities? And so, when thinking about the strategic role of extracurricular activities at boarding schools, I think that we should be thinking about it in two different ways. On the one hand, you have the overall student development that I believe is integral to any student's success. And in addition to that, you also have the lens through which a child will be reviewed when applying to university at a later stage. So, just to riff off of what Daniel had mentioned previously, I think that one of the most important parts of extracurricular activities is really thinking through the personal growth that your child will develop while going through different sports, different clubs, taking on opportunities to do research as well as public speaking. It centers around this idea of personal growth, where activities outside of the classroom really fosters that self-confidence. It also builds resilience. And I think most importantly, going back to ideas that Daniel has mentioned before around the culture, it's the sense of belonging. Is your child going to feel like they fit in? Because a sense of belonging ultimately enables them to have that courage to go out to try new things. And ultimately, that also highlights that they are going to be go-getters in the future, really extending themselves in different ways. In addition to that personal growth, I think that extracurricular activities enable students to develop new skills. Sometimes what students learn in the classroom is fantastic, but it is also very traditional. It's very standardized to a certain extent. And so, thinking through the different activities that your child has access to is really important when thinking about the essential skills like collaboration, like communicating effectively, solving different problems, and also thinking critically about how they can utilize what they learn in the classroom in the real world. This is where a lot of that work happens, which is why when universities are reviewing applications from students who attend top tier boarding schools, it's not solely focusing on the academics. It's thinking about where have you had the opportunity to take what you learn inside of the classroom and apply it in the outside world. In addition to that, we also need to focus on this idea of happiness that you've heard just earlier in this presentation. How do students engage socially with their peers? How are they networking with teachers? I oftentimes remind students that it's not solely the activities that they do or the grades on their transcript that are going to get them into college. There's a critical part called the recommendation letter that various teachers will be writing in support of your child's application when they are ready to apply to university. And so building those relationships with coaches, with mentors, with advisors, with teachers becomes really integral to that entire experience of what we would call a well-rounded education. So my encouragement is when you attend revisit days or when you are looking at the different aspects of your child's development and what you are hoping for as you consider various offers from boarding schools, ask yourself, where will my child receive a well-rounded education? And what does that actually mean for them? From the university side, I think that it is so important for us to also consider passion. Is the school going to be a nurturing environment where your child is going to be able to identify and begin articulating their purpose? And then how are they utilizing that idea of purpose and what they would like to achieve in the world and turn that into a passion project? Where they are merging what they are learning, their different experiences, opportunities inside and outside of the classroom to do something that is truly authentic and independent to who they are as individuals. I oftentimes remind families that at this stage of the game, we are in 2025, and some of the top tier universities are receiving close to, if not more than 100,000 applications each year. And of those 100,000 applications, at least 40,000 applicants meet the minimum requirement when it comes to standardized testing or academic transcripts. And so it's really important for your child to stand out. And part of how they will be able to stand out is through identifying a passion project. And being at a school that's going to nurture that particular growth is really important. However, at the same time, it is also really critical for you as parents to think about, does my child need additional support outside of the structure of the school? And perhaps this is where you can reach out to a counselor outside of that space. Or maybe it's an advisor at the school who would then help your child to develop this passion project. Art, sports, and leadership roles. The important part of leadership is that your child needs to start rethinking what leadership truly means. Leadership is not solely about leading from the front. Being a captain is an amazing achievement, and we always encourage students to try their best to stand out, to take on leadership opportunities. But at the beginning, in the freshman and sophomore years, depending on the school that they select, there might be certain limitations. And so it's so important for your child to begin learning leadership skills very early on so that they not only apply for a leadership position later on, but rather they begin leading from behind and they emerge as leaders in the future. Finally, something that I would highly recommend when it comes to thinking through the different schools that you'll be applying to or that the offers that you've been receiving over the past few weeks is what opportunities are there outside of the regular classes for your child to really extend themselves academically. These days, we are seeing students with published books, with research papers, who have applied to maybe different competitions, whether it is scientific research or humanities research or creative writing. It's really important for your child to be in a community that's going to challenge them. So think about the research opportunities, different capstone projects that your child may be engaging in at that particular school when making this decision. Because it is important to note that extracurricular activities is not a checkbox. It is for the development of your child, for them to build a profile that they are proud of, but also a profile that is authentic to who they are. And this will enable them to be excited about each new challenge and opportunity that comes their way. In addition to this, from a university guidance lens, it's also important for me to talk with you today about what do you really need to prioritize when it comes to university and career readiness when selecting a school for your child. As I've mentioned before, a strong academic foundation isn't enough. So what are the opportunities for your child to really showcase critical thinking? How are they approaching the transition to the high school that they will be attending? And in that transition, as they face different challenges, whether it is social or academic, it's so important for them to advocate for themselves, as well as have an ecosystem of support, whether it is you as a parent or an advisor or a class teacher. The ability for your child to really develop the skills to advocate for themselves is going to be critical. I'd like to use a quick anecdote. I know that we are running short of time for this webinar, but a quick anecdote. I recently spoke with a student who attends a fantastic American boarding school. And they had mentioned that part of the experience that was so challenging is that right at the beginning, students go through orientation, they start the academics. Academics can be challenging. But having a strong social life and being able to engage with the peers has been so important for them. And so I would also say that part of adapting to these new environments is encouraging your child to actually take up space and try things that they may not be accustomed to. Perhaps your child has never heard of field hockey or lacrosse. Encourage them to try new things, dare to be brave, so to speak. Because when I spoke with a student, they said that it was only through trying new things and playing different sports that they were able to form friendships that was so meaningful that it impacted not only their social life, but how well they were doing academically as well. So these are all the important parts that you need to think about when selecting a school for your child, as well as how that is going to feed into their university and career readiness. We all know that the job market is changing quite significantly. The skills that were popular 5 years ago are almost obsolete at this point. And so it is important to think about how are they showcasing and building these skills? And do they have a college counselor who's going to support them through that process as well? So, when visiting, if you do have the opportunity to do so, try to speak with a college counselor. Ask them how they support the students through such a stressful moment in their lives. As a previously school-based counselor, I know that this is one of the most challenging experiences that a child can go through, which is applying to university. It's so important for them not only to be guided, but also supported. In addition to that, internships, mentorships. Daniel had mentioned the importance of alumni networks. It's so important that your child will have students that they could look up to who came before them. In addition to that, just having the ability to have a conversation with someone who's attended a university that your child aspires to can change their trajectory so much. I oftentimes say that as an educator with more than 10 years of experience, oftentimes my students listen to their peers more than they listen to me. And so it is so important that they are in an environment that is supportive, where they can really feel a sense of trust, that they are privileged to be championed in every single thing that they do is so critical. And so these are the ways in which university and career readiness, I believe, forms an integral part to the decision that you'll be making right now. As Daniel had mentioned, think about the end at the beginning as well. I'll hand over now back to Daniel to share a practical approach to making these decisions.
Thank you, Dexter. And we are now towards the tail end of our presentation. Just to wrap things up, these are some of the key questions that we suggest our parents to keep in mind when thinking about which school to enroll our child in. The very first and the most important, what environment helps my child thrive? Again, that analogy of big fish, right? I keep saying that because it's so easy, it's so vivid. It's a big fish. What environment can help my child become the big fish, right? The big fish in his or her environment, not just general big fish. It is the big fish in the environment that we enroll our child in. So we need to understand how competitive that landscape is, how supportive also that landscape is, and what my child likely going to his or her upcoming growth likely to become in that environment for us to come up with a vision of how likely my child will become very competitive big fish in that environment. What are our child's learning strengths and challenges? What are the type of environment that would that would be needed to support our child for them to grow faster, to become even stronger, and for their future development, what do our child need? So these are some longer term, more conceptual framework for our parents to think about when dealing with the big question of which school to enroll our child in. Next slide, please. I will just end it here. The right fit is a personal choice. So again, please, it's not a ranking, all right? It's a ranking which says, 2 is better than 3, 13 is better than 14. It's very, very misleading and deceiving. It's about the right fit. It's about your child. It's about your child growing, and it's about his or her thriving and growing. So the right fit is a personal choice, and it is one where your child will thrive, grow, and be challenged in the best way possible. Next slide, please. I don't think we have time for Q&A, But I'll just end over here with a quick remark. I'll pass the microphone over to Mr. Dexter again. We at Sesameed Education runs a uni prep program, which is very unique in the industry. I dare say we are the only who does it this way. We turn the entire college counseling and conceptualize it and put it into a framework. And that framework, three components, and we call it the Uni Prep program. One of the first component is a online class whereby our students will be engaged in a small class of engage in partners discussion. And I'll let Mr. Dexter talk a little bit about that. And then we have another component of individual coaching, and followed by parent partnership. We'll be engaging according to our reviewing sessions with our parents as well. So, Mr. Dexter, please, we are going to be having an open house this coming weekend, 2 days later, and we would very much like to invite all of our to consider joining us.
Fantastic. Thank you. Again, families, thank you so much for the opportunity to share this particular program with you. So this Sunday, March 23rd, we'll be having an open class for all families, which include parents and students, to join. And I think that as you consider which high school to select, it's important to begin thinking about what is that transition going to be like. And so we've designed a lesson around building a competitive high school profile and preparing for academic success, where we will zero into what is actually required of you as a student when you attend boarding school academically. And this would be a great opportunity, one, to learn about how uni prep is structured and to actually engage in a class. And two, the other part of this is to really think about what support does your child need over the next 4 or 3 years as they navigate high school. So we highly encourage that you join at the Zoom link that was shared in the chat. You can feel free to copy the entire message. And if you may have any peers or other family members who are considering or currently attending high school across the globe, UniPrep is a program that is not solely for a particular demographic, but it's open to the entire world, given that it is an online class. So please do spread the word of this particular program and invite family members or friends to attend the open lesson. And we look forward to just sharing a part of what we've developing over the past year in terms of a curriculum that really centers on student development in order to build profiles that are then going to be competitive for top-tier universities in the US. So thank you all once again for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you again for having you with us this evening. We will be sending the video link to all families shortly, either later on tonight or tomorrow morning, coupled with the checklist for families to reference with when selecting the school for your child to enroll in. Once again, congratulations for the admission offers that your family has received, and good luck in picking the right school for your child. And if you run into any questions, please do not hesitate. We at Sesameed Education are always on standby to help our families. Thank you once again, and goodbye and good night.